Well, welcome everyone. I'm Bill Anderson. I'm coming live here from the Costa del Sol, and I have to say it's a little bit overcast today, which is not too bad. Hopefully, we'll get some rain at the weekend. And I want to welcome my special guest today, Andy Nye. Andy, welcome.
Thank you.
And perhaps I should give you your retired title, Major Andy Nye. That might give you a clue, listeners, as to what we're going to be talking about. You are a retired army officer. Which part of the army did you work in, Andy?
I worked exclusively in the infantry. I started off my days in the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers for a short spell, and then I was commissioned into the Staffordshire Regiment, which is now part of the Mercian Regiment. And then latterly, I transferred into the Royal Irish Regiment.
Right.
So I've spent my entire career in the infantry.
Right. Okay. And when did you retire from the army?
I retired in 2007.
Okay. You don't look old enough to have been retired all that time and spent all that time in the forces, Andy.
You're a smooth talker, and I steal my wife's moisturizer. I actually think that living in Spain helps keep you fit, and I think fit equals young looking. I think that because of as many of your listeners will know, living in a more temperate climate and a more outdoor lifestyle, you're more inclined and you have more time, I think, to stay fit. And of course, all those people that play golf or paddle or cricket or walking football or hockey or tennis will all be able to relate to that.
So do you do all of these as well, Andy? Do you down here on the Costa del Sol?
No, I am a normal bloke, and my body wouldn't take that. But I do try and do something. I do try and do something every day. I'm a big hockey fan, so I play hockey a couple of times a week still, which is quite handy.
Right.
And there's a masters team, which means for over 50s.
Uh-huh.
It means for over 50s. That's the team I'm in. It means for over 40s, but there is a masters team in Benalmadena just down the road, which is quite a busy club. It's got about 30 to 40 players in that age bracket. So that's good for my social life, good for my Spanish, and good for my hockey.
Yeah. So you retired in 2007 from the services, and how did you end up down here on the Costa del Sol?
Well, there's a big gap before I actually moved here. The military has a program for people who are going to retire called resettlement, and without turning it into something too fancy, it's really to train you or give you the skills to go back into a civilian life equipped to deal with it. So for a lot of people, that can be financial training. It can be, isn't that just typical? That can be financial training. It can be giving you a trade. So there's all sorts of trades out there that it can do. I remember when I left, HGV lorry driving was really popular, plastering, electrician, those sorts of things. I did mine to become a school teacher.
Right.
I spent the early part of my military career being quite shocked, and I hope I don't cause any offence, but shocked at the levels of education that some of our young infantrymen had.
Right.
And I remember during the Gulf War that some of the things that we did in our off time, some of the things that I did, was teach some of the soldiers how to read and write. And I remember being quite appalled and quite shocked. So when I did my resettlement course, which was for 18 months, in doing a postgraduate certificate in education, which qualified me to go off to be a school teacher, which I then did for the next 12 years. I literally left the army on Friday. On Monday, I moved into my classroom, which was quite entertaining. Lots of similarities. Everybody went, wow, what a big difference. But actually, there's apart from the end result, all my children were still alive at the end of the day. Apart from the end result, there's lots of things in common. And I think to go to your real question, my family have always had like so many families in the UK and Ireland, a special relationship with Spain.
Right.
And when I left the army, I used part of my resettlement grant and my gratuity to go halves on an apartment here with a friend of mine.
Right.
So we coming here on and off, I suppose about 13, 14 years. And then when COVID hit, we were toying with leaving and trying to see what living in Spain would be like. And we came out to Spain with we'll go there for a few months and return.
Mm.
Frankly, it was too difficult. It was too difficult to return. And when we spoke to all our friends at home, they said, what on earth would you want to return for? Particularly during COVID.
Right.
So accidentally, in many ways, we're accidentally living here. But that's kind of the journey to getting to this
right
place to live.
Yeah, it's interesting saying that you went into teaching, and I remember going back many years to my first high school, and the head teacher was a Colonel Scott, and to be honest, I mean he had the military bearing, you know, and he just scared the living daylight just by his sheer presence. He scared the living daylights out of us. I don't think he had many problems with his students.
I hope I didn't have that effect. I remember during my school training, my teacher training, there was the school teachers that I remember who used to scare the holy bejesus out of me as well. It was all much more child-centered, much more friendly, much less discipline in terms of what I would consider to be old-fashioned discipline. Far fewer tools for teachers, and very interestingly, talking to some of the elder members of my family who, during teacher training, were taught how to strike a child. Now, of course, can you imagine that? Now we'd all go to jail.
Yes, indeed we would, wouldn't they? So, were they being taught the right way to do it? Is that the story?
Well, I think it was how to strike a child without, leaving marks behind.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, listen, Andy, we probably, went through our schooling where things like the belt to the toes was still permitted, yeah.
Yeah, and the blackboard rubber.
And
do you remember the blackboard rubber?
Yeah.
Come spiraling across like some professional American football player to crack you in the skull.
Absolutely.
Never for once thinking that was outrageous or wrong. Just thinking, oh my God, I got caught.
Sorry, I'm just reading a message from Dave, and the answer is yes, Dave. And Andy, you mentioned the Gulf War. So, is this one of the areas that you were deployed to during your military career, the Gulf?
Yeah, the Iraq War was my first war, and we deployed in 1991.
Right.
Into first of all into Al Jubail, into Saudi Arabia, and we were there. I mean, for the whole war, we were there for about 7 months, and of course we moved. I don't know if people remember, but I remember January the 15th. 1992 was the cutoff date for Saddam Hussein to have behaved rationally, which of course he failed to do. Yeah, so I was 23,
right?
23 going on 24. I look at my son now, who's 25, and think, my goodness me, that's terribly young.
Yeah,
and I think the average age of my platoon at the time was, in line with that good old song. It was about 19.
Right.
That was my first war, and I consider myself very lucky that I got exposed to war fighting and all the things that go with it at such a young age.